So, single government ID, which is the latest wheeze being pushed by the Labour Party under our dear beloved leader Starmer. Um, what can I say? It's a really terrible idea. I've heard the stories. I understand why people shrug their shoulders over it, but I think people need to understand how quickly technology moves and what the implications are of it. With this, what you're talking about, taking every single touch point that you have with the government, everything from your driving license, national insurance ID, your passport details, potentially your criminal record, socials, benefits, everything else being basically twinned together in a single ID, a single database that allows someone to effectively understand everything about you. That's effectively what they're talking about doing. Now, they're not advertising it as such, but that's the reality of it. That's a lot of power for a state that frankly has shown itself to be incompetent, illiberal, and frankly unpleasant, particularly coming out of COVID, which is exactly what has happened. I, for one, came away from COVID as a social democrat with a very, very pessimistic and cynical view of government and frankly the illiberal people who sit within the British establishment, within the civil service, our institutions, everything else. I don't want them to have this power. I think it's a terrible idea. For many, many years, we've been spent time in our pop culture worrying about, the creeping power of corporations, what Amazon knows about us, what Google knows about us. Well, this is multiple levels higher and more detailed than anything that they will have. Those corporations would have on us. And what should really, really worry people, I think, in this particular case is the fact that we know the Bank of England, which is currently in the process of umming and ahhing over a cryptocurrency for the UK, has explored how they could unify that with a single government ID. So imagine that. Now you have a single ID and system which unifies everything that the government knows about you, but also everything you spend, where you go, who you also interact with, what transactions you're making, and everything else. So I don't know, they want to know where you're going at the moment. Well, they could just punch it into the database. They could look up your number plate easily from the DVLA. They would pick you up on the ANPR cameras that are scattered around the country. They'd be able to see exactly what transactions you're making in what towns and cities, etc., etc. Maybe you leave the country, same problem. And you can bet your bottom dollar that actually the flight details of when you leave the country would also be shared with the state, because states love sharing data like that together. And again, when you land, you're going to be using your credit card, which immediately is going to fly back to them in every shape or form. Now, I find that terrifying. As I said, coming out of COVID, I think that everyone should find that terrifying. You don't want to give any party that level of power and understanding of what's going on in your life. It's why I would always fight for cash. I don't use lots of cash. I should do, but I don't use lots of it. But I want the option to do it because cash is anonymous. It gives me the ability to, at any stage, take some money out and go and transact as I want. And I think this is the thing that most people need to realise with what's going on with this current situation is they want to take that anonymity away from us. They want to be able to completely understand what's going on in our lives. And when we look at the economics of it, you should really, really think about this, because just as they could look up and track what you're doing, once this unification of these IDs with potentially a cryptocurrency and everything else takes place, then that basically gives them almost unlimited power, because the state at any stage with the cryptocurrency very easily, rather than at the moment they have to take legal recourse, go to a bank to get your bank account frozen. With a cryptocurrency, that flows only through the central bank, which is a government institution, whatever the bullshit they peddle in terms of the Bank of England being independent. So they literally could just turn your money off. Or what they could do also is, and this is where cryptocurrencies, from a intellectual economics perspective, very good. If you're fighting deflation because people aren't spending money, they could program that money to disappear tomorrow. You've got to go spend it today or you'd lose the money. It gets taken out of your account. But it's my money. I've earned that money. Well, the state says no longer. So you're basically giving them power that no one should have. You want to live in a society, just as I said as a social democrat in my last video, I believe in a balanced economy, and I also believe in mixed institutions. I don't want the state to be too big. I don't want the state to be too small. I don't want corporations to be too big or too small. Unions, same thing. I want different centers of power that balance each of them, balance against each other, and give us the most free society possible. And I really, really, really worry about what they're trying to do here. Now, fortunately, or unfortunately, the British state is so resoundingly incompetent at the moment that, frankly, it can't even tie its own shoelaces. Can it pull this off? Probably not. But then I also know from a couple of journalists that apparently they are already trying to do a single government gateway, a little bit more advanced than what we're doing, and they're apparently using, I think it's Romanian developers. So you can bet your bottom dollar that this would be a complete and utter disaster if they do manage to pull it off, probably meaning that the state loses all our data and we spend our lives trying to work out why there's 17 million Daniel Salts in 22 countries around the world. But that's not really a reason to be completely nonchalant about it. If anything, that should make us even more willing to stand up and be clear and say, no, I'm not willing to put up with this, particularly Mr. Starmer, when you are absolutely detested in this country by pretty much everyone, including from your own party. But actually also, it wasn't in your manifesto, and there is absolutely no democratic mandate for this. There is none. No democratic mandate at all. He has absolutely not a leg to stand on in terms of going out to the country and actually saying he's going to do this. And the argument that he puts forward over it will stop illegal migration is, frankly, it's nonsense. And it's nonsense because just think about this. Every one of the major countries that's suffering from illegal migration, from France, Germany, I'm pretty certain Greece, Italy, pretty much every one of them has got an ID card. ID cards are the norm in Europe. Maybe not like this, but ID cards are the norm. Has it stopped illegal migration? No. Nothing. Nope. Still millions pouring in. So the idea this will make a big difference is for the birds. What would make a big difference, actually, in terms of of Britain, would be actually local enforcement. I mean, my family did the markets in the 1980s when I was growing up, and you would always hear trading standards turned up. Do you ever see that anymore? No, not at all, because the councils, like I said in my last video, have been gutted by adult social care, gutted by special educational needs. Both of them are statutory requirements, and therefore, basically what it means is they take all the money first. So if you wanted to deal with illegal working in the UK, you would actually deal with rebuilding the councils so local enforcement can take place, or maybe have an actual national department that deals with employment enforcement, something similar to ICE in the United States. That would deal with it. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about an ID for some reason, an ID that no one's asked for. So, be wary of it. And also think about it. Name me one country that's had massive illegal migration where there apparently is next to none now. The United States. And do you know what? In the United States, there isn't a single ID card in the United States. So they've managed to stop illegal migration without an ID card. They're managing to get rid of people from within the country without an ID card. So you tell me. But I mean, I take satisfaction, or I take a bit of confidence in the fact that our dear beloved leader has united pretty much even the crank-filled Lib Dems and many others into opposition against this. I mean, at some level in the back brain, I think a few of these people have realised that actually, and you should do, by the way, this is true, they've gone, well, what happens if the government has this power and we have a government we don't like? That's actually the correct response you should always have. It's very easy to sit there and go, oh, well, I like what the government's doing because my people are in power at the moment. But you should always worry about what the next people will do. And he has got pretty much every party coming out against this. Now, a cynical part of me would say that, perhaps this was a bit of a dead cat thrown on the table for us to all appreciate to try and deal with the McSweeney thing. Maybe. I mean, I think this has been floating around for some time, but it does make me wonder. But I think that he's in for the fight of his life. I think coming at the moment now when they are already in crisis, I think the likelihood of this passing is minimum. And if it does pass, then I think the chances of it being rolled out are very, very minimum. Like I said, I mean, the British state is just grossly incompetent. It was sad to say that we have certainly regressed from being one of the best governed countries in the world to not one of the worst in the world, but certainly an incredibly badly governed one. But I'm up for this fight. I hope everyone else is up for the fight. Just because you don't see the issue, it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And like I said, no government should be imbued with this power. And if you want to understand what that means, go look at what's happening in China with the social credit system, where people can't even take trains, for example, if their social credit system has dropped low enough. I'm not suggesting we're going there now, but let's face it, when we all started talking about going back, I'm 45, going back 20 years ago, talking about PC, political correctness and, policing the language and everything else, I bet no one back then, certainly I didn't, would ever thought that we'd get to the stage where 30 or 40 people a day are being arrested in the UK for hurty words on Twitter or other social media. And that's where we are. It is scary. We've got to fight back against it. Write your MP, sign the petition, but more than anything else, explain to people what this means. It is dangerous. No organisation, no government, no corporation, no one should be given this level of power. And we need to fight back against it now because, as time goes by, these things slip. And as I said, what may seem relatively inoffensive now, I don't trust the liberal fools that make up the British establishment at the moment to not weaponise it. And I would trust Nigel Farage or whoever else that I may or may not like or dislike less anymore. I don't want anyone to have this power. And I think that it's all upon us to basically do something about it. And actually, like I said, turn around to them and say, you know what, politicians, you know what, Starmer and Labour, if you're so worried about illegal migration, how about you go out and police our borders rather than trying to police us? How about you actually deal with the real problem rather than this basically displacement activity to try and get what you want out of the current situation? Because I'm tired of it, and I think everyone else is, and that's why we are here. Have a good weekend, guys.